Join me as we learn Chumash for Shabbos, the seventh Torah reading of Parshas Terumah, chapter 27, verse 9. Yesterday we learned about the outer altar. Now that we're talking about the things that were outside, today the Torah will tell us about the courtyard. V'asisas chatzar mishkan, and you will then now make a courtyard for the tabernacle. Lif'as negev temena, on the south side there shall be kloim lachatzer, where you're going to make nettings made twined linen for the courtyard. How is this going to be made? Sheish mazar, twined linen, meya ba'ama, 100 amma long, oirech lapeya echas, for one side. Rashi, kloim, what does the word kloim mean? Asuyim kamin kali sfina. They're going to be webbed, they're going to be like a, which are usually hung on the boat. Nekavim, that there'll be holes in it, maisa kliya, that they're woven one into the other, not kaloi maisa oirech, they're looped one into the other, not like woven tight like we made for the ones on the actual tabernacle. The Targum calls it like a sieve, that it had holes in it. Lapeya echas, the word peya, kol ruach kari peya, every side is called a peya. What's going to be continues. V'amud of esrim, you're going to have 20 beams. V'adneim esrim, 20 pillars, and then 20 sockets made out of nechoshes copper. V'avei amud v'chashukeim. The hooks of the pillars and the bands on the pillars are going to be kasef, out of silver. Amud of esrim, Rashi continues and says, Chomish amis ben amud l'amud. If you can have 100, if the curtain has to be 100 amos long, and you're only having 20 pillars, that gives you 5 amos, 5 cubits between each one. Vadneim, the sockets of the pillars, nechoshes will be of copper. Hadanim yeshvim al aretz, the sockets would sit on the ground. Vamudim tkuyin l'seicham, and the pillars would be situated in them. Hayaoyisen kamin kundasim, they would make it like a peg, like pillars. Shekoidim plash, or konshishan tvachim v'rachman shleisha. They were long 6 tvachim and wide 3. V'tabas nechoshes kvua boy, and it had a copper ring on the top of it. Bemtzoi in the middle. V'koirach sfas akel asaviv, and then they would wrap the curtain around them with the hooks. Keneged kol amud va'amud, on each one of these pillars. And then they would hang the hook through the ring that was on the curtain. The way they hang up the doors, they had a hook coming out of the beam. So if you have the beam itself, on the beam there was a hook. On the actual curtain, they created these copper, silver pieces that would be inside and in it a ring, and then they would hang each place what we would call today grommets, similar to that, and that's the way they would hang it on those beams that were coming out of it. And that's the way they would put up the partitions for the courtyard. Vave amudim. Those are the hooks that they would hang it. The actual pillars was coated with with beautiful strands of silver. Rashi says, I don't know if the silver decoration was around the whole thing, or is it just around the middle? But this silver piece, the word chashukim means to be surrounded, around it. So in this case, like a belt. So you had the beam, which was made out of acacia wood. The beam was then coated in copper. Around it was silver decorations, like a design, a rope of silver around it. On the top of it was a silver hook. And then on the actual curtain, there were these rings that would be able to have the grommets that would then hook onto these hooks. Verse 11. So too you should make on the north side, in the length of these curtains, it should be 100 amos long. Amud of esrim, there should be 20 pillars. Vadneim esrim, 20 sockets, nechoshes of copper. Vavei amud v'chashukeim, the hooks on the pillars and the design around it, kasaf, should be of silver. Verse 12. The reicha v'chatzer, and to the width of the courtyard, lif asiyam, on the west side, kloim chamishim amud, the curtains will be 50 cubits long. Amudeim asara, there you'll have 10 pillars. Vadneim asara, and there you'll have 10 sockets. The width of the courtyard, Lifas Kedma, which is now the entrance, which is on the east, Mizracha, Chamishim Amma will also be 50 cubits. Lifas Kedma Mizracha, Rashi says, Pnei Mizrach, the face of the side of the east side, Kari Kedem is called Kedem, Lashim Panim, meaning the face, Ochar, the back, Lashon Acharayim Lefichach, therefore, Tzad HaMizrach Kari Kedem, Shupanim, Ma'adav Kari Ochar, K'me'at Hayam Achre, Yom HaMarava. Therefore, he calls the east side the front, the west side the back, and as people say, as we use it in the book of Deuteronomy, the Yom HaAchrein, the outside, the last sea, which refers to the sea that's on the west. 50 amma, however, in the front side, those 50 ammas were not closed completely with curtains, because of there was the opening for people to get in. There were 15 amma, there were curtains on one side, the other side had 15, because you had 50. So you have 15 on one side empty, 15 on the other side empty, so that gives you a total of 30. Then you had a 20 opening for people to get in. And that's what it says. That's why for the gateway of the actual courtyard was 20 amma, because they made another curtain which was for 20 ammas to cover the actual opening. Verse 14. 15 amas, this is what he continues, what we just mentioned in Rashi before. 15 amas kloim lakasav u'madem, shleisha vadneim shleisha. There was 15 amas for the curtain on this side. There were 3 pillars for the 15 amas and 3 sockets. 14, Rashi, amadem shleisha, chomish amas min amal, because like as you notice around the whole entire courtyard, there was always 5 amas between every pillar. Between the one that was on the corner on the north, on the east-south side, until the third one on the east. 5 amos, and therefore from each pillar to pillar there was 5 cubits. From the second to the third were 5 cubits. So too, same to on the other side, going from the north, from the northeast, and then there were 4 pillars just for the curtain, and the reason why there were 4 in the front, this was parallel to the 4 that was in the back. And for the other side, there was also 15 amos of curtain, amudeim shleisha, 3 pillars, vadneim shleisha, and 3 sockets. And for the actual opening of the gateway, as we mentioned, there was a 20 amos courtyard that was able to move doorway. For the opening, you had a curtain, 20 amos, which that was woven of. This was different than the rest of them, because if you recall, the rest of the curtains, there was a tapestry that had holes in it. This one is going to be different. It had the turquoise, the purple, and the scarlet wool, the shesh masra, and the twined linen. This was woven together. It had 4 beams, 4 pillars, and 4 sockets parallel to the back, which also had 4 beams and 4 sockets. And this was where the entrance of the actual tabernacle courtyard was. Verse 17. All the pillars around the courtyard, had these beautiful lines of silver on them. Vaveim kasaf, they had silver hooks. Vadneim nechoshes, but their sockets were copper. Kol amudei achatzer, Rashi, lefi shlei pirish vavin chashukim vadin nechoshes elot tzaf nedarim. Because previously, when he talks about it in the verse, he only mentions about the north and south that they had the silver and the copper sockets. But for the east and west, he didn't enumerate and explain. Therefore, he enumerates it here that they all had copper sockets and all the beams had the silver design on it. Verse 18. The actual length of the courtyard was 100 amos. Reichev, the width was 50 amos. V'koim, and the height was 5 amos. So you were able to see halfway of the tabernacle from outside the courtyard. Sheish mazar, the curtain was made out of a woven linen. Vadneim nechoshes, and its sockets were copper. Rashi, oirech hachatzer, Tzaf and Vadarim, over here he's telling us the whole north and west. Jamin Mizrach and Ma'irav Me'ek Bama was 100. V'reichav Chamishim Bama, Chatzer Sheba Mizrach. The courtyard on the east, Teis Murubas, was square, meaning a square 50 by 50. Mishkan Orke Shleishim Rach Me'aser. The actual Mishkan itself, the tabernacle, was only 30 by 10. V'hamid Mizrach Pische B'sfas Gimel Achitzenim, and he put the entrance on the last 3 of the length of the actual courtyard. Nimtza Kuli B'chamishim Hapnimim V'kola Orke L'Seif Shleishim. That the actual Mishkan stood by the first 50 amas of the inside, and it ended by 30 amas. That means behind the Mishkan, if there's 30 amas of the Mishkan towards the entrance, what do you have behind it? It's 50 amas, so you have the 20 amos empty. Yeah, from the west courtyard until the actual courtyard, until the actual west of the tabernacle, was 20 amos separation. The Mishkan Esr Amos, the width of the Mishkan was 10 Amos, centered. Reichav HaChatzer, and the width of the courtyard was 50. Nimtzlei Asrim Amar Revach L'Safin Al Darim, so you have a 10 space because if it's 50 wide, so you have 10 in the center, 20 on each side. So therefore, so too on the west, you have, as we mentioned, it's a 50 by 50. So the backyard of the Mishkan, if you want to call it, was a 50 by 50 square. The the height of the courtyard was 5 amas tall. That was also the width of the curtains. And Neim Necheshes, their sockets were copper. Lahavi adne hamasach shlei temer le'demer necheshes alamodei akloim. Adne hamasach shemenacher. Kenir beinu shlekach chazav v'shanan. Over here, it's coming to tell us that even the ones of the curtain, the entranceway, that also was copper sockets. That's why the Torah repeats it again to think, oh, maybe they were different color sockets, different material sockets. To tell us all the sockets were all copper. Verse 18. Eirech hachatzer mei ba'ama. We just did verse 18? Verse 19, sorry. All the tools of the tabernacle, and everything that should be made of it, and this is all the pegs that were made with it as well, and all the stakes that they needed to be able to hold down the curtains of the tabernacle, were all made of copper. What does this mean? All the vessels that they needed? That means they needed tools. They needed different tools to be able to put up the tabernacle each time. If it was hammers, chisels, or whatever it may be, any kind of tool that they made or needed was made out of copper. Yistes, the stakes, these are like shoes, stakes made out of copper. They would take it with ropes and they would hold it with the ropes, a stake, and then would knock it into the ground so that the wind doesn't blow these curtains away. I don't know if the stakes were stuck into the ground. I don't know if these stakes were on the curtain, and with the weight of them, it held down the curtain on the bottom, or with the ropes, they pulled it to the side, and therefore it was then in the ground, and that's what kept it going, that the wind shouldn't blow it away. I say, but it seems like, from the way the Torah talks about it, that it was stuck into the ground, because therefore they're called yisedes, pegs, stakes, and stakes are usually in the ground. And this verse where it says in Isaiah, that this Yerushalayim is compared to a tent that will never move from its place, and its stakes will never be uprooted forever. So we see over here the concept of a stake. Usually the stakes of tents were stuck into the ground to keep it in its space. This concludes the Torah reading of Parshas Terumah.